Margaret had absolutely no idea how her life ended up like this. And honestly, neither do we. In a survival class, the instructor drops what sounds like the most important lesson of all. Never lose hope, because despair destroys judgment faster than anything else. Inspiring stuff, right? Well, reality is about to be far less kind to our girl. Turns out she finds a random novel on the street, starts reading it, and somehow dies in the process, just like that. The novel follows a brilliant heroine and 5 male leads surviving for a year on a magical, deserted island, but underneath all the survival elements, it is actually a dark romance story. And here's where it really goes wrong. She does not wake up as the heroine. She, Margaret Floan, the villainess, second daughter of a ducal family, whose entire purpose in the story is to hate the heroine and eventually be killed by the male leads after they slowly lose their minds. Now, with her memories and Margaret's memories mixing, there is no denying it. She is truly inside the novel. So she immediately locks in on one goal and one goal only: survive. Stay hidden for a year until the island opens again, and most importantly, avoid Crown Prince Enoch Astor, Klaus Langrid Bishop Ruzif, the male lead who hates her more than anyone else. Simple enough plan, right? Well, the universe clearly has other ideas, because the second she looks down the beach, there he is, lying at the exact starting point of the novel. She panics and makes a run for the forest before he wakes up, but before she can escape, someone grabs her leg and sends her crashing to the ground. The prince pulls her close, grabs her by the neck, and calmly asks where she thinks she is running off to. And just like that, our girl learns a painful lesson. Life really is just terrible timing. I saw that disaster coming the moment she spotted him. Margaret is already questioning where everything went wrong, and honestly, can we blame her? She just realized she has possessed Margaret Floan, the villainess of a dark romance novel called Something More Important Than Survival. She knows exactly how badly things end for this character, so the plan is simple. Stay as far away from Crown Prince Enoch Astor Klaus Langridus as humanly possible. But of course, the very first person she runs into on the island is him. Before she can even think about running, he grabs her and demands an explanation. And from his perspective, it actually makes sense. To him, it looks like she kidnapped him. See, the original Margaret had stalked him relentlessly. And to make things even worse, a so-called love potion she was tricked into buying nearly killed him after triggering a fatal allergic reaction. After all of that, Enoch genuinely came to despise her, and honestly, who could blame him? The problem is, even though none of that was our girl's doing, she cannot exactly stand there and explain that a completely different soul is now living in this body. The original Margaret really did cause all those problems, and now she is the one left holding the consequences. Our girl tries to calm things down, insisting she has no idea what is happening either. She even attempts a clumsy distraction, pointing somewhere random, but Enoch sees right through it and demands answers again. Eventually, she argues that even the powerful Enoch family would never be reckless enough to kidnap the crown prince and, surprisingly, that land. He actually considers it and starts wondering if another political faction could be responsible. The moment she thinks she is finally free, he grabs her hand and refuses to let her go anywhere. Instead, he decides they need to figure out where they are, starting with climbing the mountain to examine the terrain. But our girl knows something he does not. This enchanted island becomes extremely dangerous after sunset because magical beasts roam freely at night. So she quickly suggests waiting until morning since the sun is already getting low. And just like that, he agrees. Watching him adapt so quickly honestly reminds her why this man became the crown prince through ability alone. It is hard to believe he eventually loses his mind over the heroine later. While they travel together, Margaret remembers another key detail from the novel. The island is filled with useful modern items hidden throughout the wilderness. The original characters kept finding them and throwing them away because they had no idea what they were, but unlike them, she knows exactly how valuable those things could be. For now, though, the plan is simple. Stay close to Enoch, find the cabin where the main characters originally stayed, hide there for the full year, and avoid all the chaos. Enoch seems to sense she is plotting something because he warns her not to even think about running. She agrees and follows him deeper into the forest. The beach is blocked by cliffs, the sun is sinking fast, and things are already getting urgent. Just when she tells him they should head back to where they first woke up, a growl tears through the trees. They both turn, and our girl's stomach must have dropped. The magical beast standing before them should only appear after nightfall. Yet here it is, right in front of them. The nightmare started way ahead of schedule, and honestly, nothing about this is surprising anymore. Out of nowhere, a wolf appears before sunset, and this completely throws Margaret off. These monsters are only supposed to come out at night, yet here one is already lunging at them. Before she can even react, Enoch turns around and swings a simple tree branch. One hit. The beast drops dead instantly. Our girl is stunned, and honestly, so are we. Bro really just killed a magical creature with a random stick, as expected of the main male lead. But something else catches her attention. The moment blood appears, he freezes for just a second. and she remembers he has some kind of trauma tied to blood. Unfortunately, there is no time to think about that because a much bigger problem has just hit her. If monsters are appearing before sunset, then her knowledge of the novel might be completely unreliable. Maybe they are not tied to nighttime at all. Maybe they simply move whenever darkness falls. And if that is true, things are far worse than she thought. While she spirals internally, Enoch notices how pale she looks and gently asks if she is all right, and this genuinely confuses her. A moment ago, he was treating her like a criminal, and now he is checking on her with actual concern. After she thanks him, he makes one thing very clear, though. She is still a suspect, and once they return to the Empire, he plans to question her properly. Until then, she is not allowed to die without his permission. As darkness falls, the two head back to the beach and get to work building a shelter using branches, leaves, pebbles, and moss from the forest. Enoch even offers her the safer spot inside, and for a second, our girl is genuinely impressed by how considerate he is. That feeling disappears almost immediately when he follows it up by telling her not to stay too close because he has absolutely no desire to sleep with her. Ouch. Moving on. There is a more urgent problem anyway. Neither of them has had water since arriving, so, ignoring his warning to stay put, she sneaks off into the forest and comes back carrying coconuts. She explains that the water inside can keep them hydrated, though eating the flesh too early might cause stomach problems. Without breaking a sweat, he cracks one open with pure strength and hands half to her. She tastes it first, confirms it is safe, and tells him he can drink. And that is the moment something shifts in how he looks at her. The woman he remembers is a spoiled ducal's daughter obsessed with status, yet somehow this person in front of him knows how to build a shelter, source drinking water, and handle herself in the wild. The more he watches her, the harder it becomes to believe she is the same Lady Margaret he despised. Honestly, the confusion on his face is completely understandable. Enoch cannot shake the feeling that Margaret has become a completely different person, and honestly, he is not wrong. When he brings it up, she pauses for just a moment before casually saying that people change when pushed to their limits. Simple enough answer, and thankfully it works. Internally, our girl is relieved she got through that one safely. Unfortunately, rest does not come easily. The shelter is tiny, and she can practically hear every breath he takes. Meanwhile, his mind is stuck on that creature from earlier. Whatever it was, it felt almost identical to a magical beast, yet his sword aura completely failed to activate against it. And that triggers something important in our girl's memory. Magic and holy power do not work on this island. Everyone is forced to survive using nothing but their own strength. Normally, that would be terrifying, but sitting next to someone like him makes it slightly less horrifying. Still, something about this whole situation does not sit right with her. Out of everyone in the Empire, why were the two of them chosen for this? The conversation quickly turns into what feels like another interrogation. She asks what he was doing before arriving on the island, and apparently, this man had been buried in paperwork for almost a month straight without leaving the palace. A complete workaholic. Then he flips the question back on her, and for a split second, she almost blurts out that she spent her days staring at a portrait of him. She catches herself just in time and claims she was simply attending tea parties and social gatherings. Eventually, she steers things toward survival, suggesting they climb the mountain tomorrow and figure out where they are. Smart move. Of course, the peace does not last long. The moment she talks a little too much, he threatens to throw her straight into the ocean if she crosses her side of the shelter. She fires back that she would not cross it even if he begged. These two seriously cannot go 5 minutes without arguing. But while the bickering continues, our girl is quietly putting the bigger picture together. The Crown Prince, the commander of the Royal Guard, the Grand Priest, the Archbishop, and the Archmage are all likely trapped somewhere on this island. This is not just a plot against Enoch. It is something much larger. Worse, the story has already gone off script. Everyone was supposed to wake up in different places, and he should have met the heroine Yuana much earlier. Since she stopped reading halfway through, she no longer knows what comes next. So the new plan is simple. Find the cabin, gather supplies, locate the underground bunker Yuana discovered near the end of Volume 1, and stay hidden until the gates open. Just as exhaustion finally pulls her under and she starts hoping this is all just a dream, something rustles through the nearby bushes. And before either of them can react, a figure steps out from the darkness. Margaret wakes up the next morning and immediately knows it was not a dream. She almost froze last night, and she made a mental note to light a fire before sleeping next time. When she turns, she finds Enoch's jacket draped over her. He is already wide awake and casually tells her she is up. She is genuinely surprised, asking if he never slept at all. He confirms it, and she realizes this man stayed awake the entire night, conserving energy in case food runs short. Cold attitude, warm actions. The contradiction is impossible to ignore. He insists they climb the mountain today, still not fully trusting her, and she does not argue. They eat coconut first and then head up, but the view at the top does nothing to comfort them. Just endless water in every direction. Enoch gets visibly frustrated for the first time, and honestly, seeing him that shaken makes everything feel even more real. Being trapped here for a full year with dangerous characters from the novel roaming around is not exactly a comforting thought. But right then, something shifts in our girl. She is a former assistant instructor for the Scout League, and sitting around waiting is not her style. She takes charge, tells him they need to head back down and focus on surviving, and then extends her hand toward him. He hesitates for just a moment, then he takes it. And somehow, that one small moment says more than anything either of them has said so far. As they head back down, the tension between them softens just a little. She starts talking about food, suggesting they try fishing or even gathering seaweed and shellfish once they return. Practical as ever. But then she casually rolls up her dress to prepare, and Enoch completely loses his composure. He turns away so fast it is almost funny, clearly not used to seeing something like that. She gives him a look and asks if this is really his first time reacting like this to a woman's leg, while he quickly insists he can handle fire duty instead, even bringing up the fact that he once fought in a Romalazan battle as if that somehow explains the reaction. Bro fought wars but could not handle one rolled-up dress. Anyway, while he sorts himself out, our girl is already thinking strategically. Most of the creatures on this island are ordinary beasts, but a few special types, like wolves and reptiles, are a different story entirely. Coconut alone is not going to cut it for long-term survival. If she wants real nutrition, she has no choice but to start hunting. She heads out to fish, acting completely confident, but internally she is quietly admitting this is her first time doing it on a beach. Still, she breaks it down like a survival guide in her head. Find the spots where water gets trapped between rocks, where waves push fish into tight cracks. That is where the small ones get stuck. Crush a few into bait, scatter them into the sea, hold your breath, wait, then strike. And just like that, she actually catches one on her very first try. Our girl immediately loses it, celebrating and calling herself a genius, even comparing herself to Bear Grylls. The joy is real and honestly well-earned. What she does not realize, though, is that Enoch has been watching her the entire time. She panics a little when she notices, tries to act normal, and just catches another fish as if nothing happened. Later that evening, he casually praises her, saying it is impressive that she can even clean fish. She tries to brush it off, but internally, she is somewhere between frustrated and bewildered. In the original story, the heroine barely did anything like this, yet here she is catching, cleaning, and preparing fish like a seasoned survivalist. The irony is not lost on her. Then, out of nowhere, Enoch moves closer and studies her face, asking why she is looking at him like that. The sudden closeness makes her freeze completely. But he simply taps her head, says he found it entertaining, and tells her he will handle things himself from now on. And just like that, the Crown Prince has appointed himself her partner without even asking. She is genuinely stunned, realizing he had been quietly watching her the whole time and actually found it amusing. As the fish cooks, she tries to pull herself together because getting flustered by him is absolutely not part of the survival plan. When she offers him the bigger portion, he refuses and tells her to focus on her own share. Then he casually adds that he will make sure she escapes safely, which throws her off completely, because this man is clearly not even thinking about himself. In her mind, she knows the original story does not exactly guarantee his safety, yet here he is talking like he has everything under control. Then comes the part that sounds less like protection and more like a warning. He tells her she will stay by his side and only leave when he allows it. She agrees without arguing, but internally she is spiraling, because anyone listening to this conversation would probably assume it is some intense love story. And honestly, it kind of feels that way. Still, when he hands back his jacket and tells her to keep it because it is warm, she quietly accepts. He insists it is nothing and walks away, but she is left standing there thinking that at least she will not freeze tonight. That night, all Margaret wants is a decent sleep. Unfortunately, even that is too much to ask. While holding Enoch's jacket close, she starts talking in her sleep, complaining about a heartless jerk and a useless bastard, wondering out loud how love could change so easily. Enoch hears every single word and cannot help wondering if she is talking about him. But then she hugs the jacket tighter and mumbles that she is talking about the jacket that used to keep her warm and now just sits there uselessly while she suffers. He can only stare in pure confusion before she drifts right back to sleep. At that point, he comes to one conclusion. This woman will say absolutely anything when unconscious. The next morning, before she can even fully wake up, Enoch casually mentions that love seemed to work out pretty well. She freezes instantly. And yes, he remembers everything. He repeats her entire sleep confession word for word, the useless bastard, the fading love, and the part where she apparently had her head resting on him the whole time. Our girl immediately tries to deny all of it, insisting she is a noble lady who does not even use language like that. He just smiles, tells her he will pretend he did not notice if she is embarrassed, then casually calls her an oddball and says he supports her love life. Later that evening, Margaret returns his jacket and thanks him for lending it. Enoch accepts it simply, saying it was what any decent man should do, and even tells her to ask if she ever needs help again. And that is when she finally brings up her real plan. She wants to head deeper into the island, believing it will increase her chances of surviving. He immediately points out that moving inland will only make rescue harder, And technically, he is not wrong, but she knows something he does not. The island cannot be escaped until the door opens anyway. Since she cannot exactly reveal that without looking completely suspicious, she takes a breath and announces that they should part ways. That clearly catches him off guard. She thanks him for saving her life, admits that being with him was genuinely comforting, and turns to leave. But before she gets even a step away, Enoch grabs her shoulder and reminds her that she can only leave when he allows it. She argues that she is making the most logical choice, but he is not buying it. She fires back, asking if he is worried about her, or if he simply wants to keep watching someone he still finds suspicious. Before the argument can go any further, he cuts her off and says they will go together. He will stay by her side while still searching for a way off the island. That answer genuinely surprises her. Living together through all of this seems to have softened something in him, and honestly, she is not about to argue with that. If she can slowly earn his trust, maybe her ending does not have to follow the original story after all. And just like that, the survival duo is officially staying together. As they move deeper into the island, Margaret spots a cliff and suggests there is probably a cave underneath it. Dangerous path, but far better shelter than staying exposed. Enoch is completely caught off guard by how naturally she reads the terrain and asks if this is the kind of education the Ducal of Floan provided. Our girl freezes instantly because she has absolutely no idea how to answer that. She vaguely agrees and claims her family put her through all kinds of training, and somehow that lands. Enoch actually sounds impressed, admitting he always assumed the Ducal simply spoiled her. Seeing her like this has him reconsidering everything. She is almost annoyed by how respectful he suddenly sounds, but she cannot exactly argue when that same knowledge is keeping them both alive. Unfortunately, there is no time to enjoy the moment because dark clouds are already rolling in fast. She urges him to move toward the cliff before the rain traps them outside. But just when things seem to be going smoothly, she slips and goes down hard. Enoch rushes over immediately, and the moment he gets a proper look at her foot, he realizes she has been struggling for a while without saying a word. Without any fuss, he tells her to sit, removes her shoe, examines the injury, and then, before she can even protest, lifts her into his arms and carries her toward the cave. And honestly, the man really does have a way of making his actions speak louder than everything he says. Margaret completely short-circuits. She keeps wondering what on earth is happening while he calmly explains that reaching shelter quickly is simply more efficient, and this is faster, logical, cold, and absolutely doing nothing good for her heart. Being carried this close by the male lead was not exactly in the survival plan. As they move, she decides to take a chance and tells him he must have noticed by now that she is a completely different person from the old Margaret, even asking him to think of her as someone reborn. And for a moment, it actually works. Enoch admits that talking to her is no longer as unpleasant as it used to be, and our girl feels a flicker of hope. Then he immediately follows it up by making it crystal clear that he will never develop feelings for her. He is simply treating her as a gentleman should. Nothing more, nothing less. Yeah, that one landed harder than it needed to. But before she can even process the sting, she hears something. Footsteps. Lots of them. And the sun has not even set yet. She urgently warns Enoch, and the moment he puts her down, a beast lunges directly toward her. She hits the ground hard, and all she can do is watch the attack coming straight at her. Everything falls apart in an instant. Another beast charges straight at Margaret, and she just stands there trembling with absolutely no idea what to do. Enoch immediately throws himself in front of her and holds the creature back, yelling at her to get out of the way. That finally snaps her back to reality. She cannot keep being a burden. She has to do something. Her first instinct is to climb a nearby tree, but of course nothing goes smoothly, because another beast rushes at her and tears right through her dress. And our girl completely loses it, screaming about her ruined dress and wondering why everything always happens to her. Honestly, the timing of that breakdown is both understandable and hilarious. But then something shifts. Memories from the original novel flash through her mind, specifically the cruel things the original Margaret said to Enoch about noble bloodlines and marriage. Looking back, she cannot even blame him for hating her. Even if he was starting to see her differently, how do you ever forget words like that? For a moment, she feels certain that running away alone and finding the bunker is still the only real answer. But then reality hits her. Despite everything the original Margaret put him through, Enoch is still out here risking his life to protect her. They were finally getting somewhere. Unfortunately, she does not get the chance to sit with that thought because everything suddenly goes dark. When Margaret opens her eyes, her first thought is pure shock. She is actually alive. Looking around, she sees blood everywhere and several monster corpses scattered around them. Panic takes over instantly as she searches for Enoch, and thankfully, he is still standing. But the moment she notices his hands covered in blood, her heart sinks. She remembers it immediately. His war trauma. Whenever he sees human blood, he loses control and pushes himself way beyond his limits until he completely collapses. She knows she has to stop him before that happens, so after a quick apology, she knocks him unconscious on the spot. Honestly, I did not see that solution coming at all. Somehow, she manages to drag him all the way back to the cliff, and by the time she lays him down, her mind is completely blank. She does not even fully understand how she got there. But once she gets a proper look at his condition, her stomach drops. He is in terrible shape. She starts wondering if the monster's claws carried some kind of poison. With no other choice, she tears. A few hours later, Enoch wakes up and immediately looks around in confusion. Then he notices his hands and legs are tied up, and he is not happy about it at all. He demands answers and orders Margaret to untie him immediately. But one look at him tells her the effects of his earlier episode have not fully faded yet. So instead of complying, she tells him to stay still because his wounds could reopen and cost him his life. He fires back, asking who she thinks she is, and for once, our girl does not budge. She raises her voice and firmly tells him to stop moving. And just like that, the argument dies. Enoch goes completely quiet and just stares at her. The atmosphere turns almost uncomfortably still, and she starts wondering if she somehow actually calmed him down. Then something even stranger happens. He quietly asks why he suddenly cannot move properly. She gently reassures him that everything is fine and pats him on the head. Almost instantly, he closes his eyes and falls right back to sleep. Margaret is stunned. This never happened in the original novel. That moment was supposed to belong to Yuana, the heroine, and it was meant to be a turning point in their romance. But here it is happening with her instead, and it feels less like a love story and more like a chaotic survival situation she barely has a grip on. The next morning, Margaret wakes up relieved to find the rain has finally stopped, and Enoch's condition has improved. He spent the entire night burning with fever, but now he looks much better. She wakes him, offers water, and feels a wave of relief when he drinks it normally. Good sign. Still, his injuries need proper treatment, so she tells him she is going out to look for herbs and food before nightfall and asks him to wait. Enoch watches her leave, holding the water, quietly thinking that she could have at least untied his wrists before disappearing. Fair point, honestly. Meanwhile, our girl moves deeper into the island, carefully picking plants she recognizes, especially ones that can help stop bleeding. Simple goal: get what she needs and return before dark. But while pushing through the bushes, she suddenly hears something nearby. Her first instinct is a monster, but the midday sun is still too bright for them to appear. That leaves only one other possibility: a person. And somehow that worries her even more. The only people supposed to be on this island are the 5 male leads, Yuana and herself. Taking care of Enoch is already exhausting enough without adding another variable. But curiosity wins, and she moves toward the sound. Then she spots him, a man with earrings, who notices her at the exact same moment and casually remarks that there was actually someone else here. And just like that, the island just got a whole lot more complicated. Margaret freezes the moment she gets a proper look at him. Silver hair, red eyes, earrings hanging from both ears. Then it hits her like a wall. This is Caden Blake, and that is the absolute last person she wants to meet right now. Without even thinking, she turns and runs. Caden immediately calls out for her to wait. And honestly, the panic makes complete sense. If Enoch is the male lead who hates Margaret the most, then Caden is the one who actually gets her killed in the original story. As a child, he was kidnapped by the temple and used in cruel experiments, and the whole thing was covered up because the Marquis Rohada had dealings with them. Ever since then, he has hated both his family and the temple with everything he has, and anything connected to either becomes a target. Normally, that would not make Margaret his enemy, but the original Margaret had supported the temple's love potion experiment, and from that moment, Caden despised her completely. He even stormed the Floan estate just to cause chaos over it. So yeah, our girl running the moment she recognized him is the most reasonable thing she has done all chapter. Margaret is determined to get away, but Caden keeps telling her to stay still, and in the struggle, she accidentally hurts herself. His attitude shifts immediately, and he asks if she is okay, which throws her off completely. While trying to recover, she notices a pendant that has fallen from his robe. It is surprisingly heavy. Meanwhile, he gently touches her cheek and starts studying her face, swearing he has seen her somewhere before. And while he does that, something clicks in her memory. After the temple experiments, Caden's special earrings became necessary to regulate his mana. In the original novel, those earrings broke shortly after arriving on the island, and without them, he suffered high fevers and struggled to control his emotions. The only person who could calm him down was Yuana. Not exactly reassuring information right now. Still staring at her, he asks why she ran away, then points out that she was speaking just fine a moment ago, yet now cannot seem to get a word out. Before she can even gather herself, he suddenly blurts out that she is pretty. Our girl is fully convinced at this point that he has lost his mind. He moves closer and casually suggests that since they met like this, maybe they should get along. She is already rejecting that idea internally with everything she has, because why on earth would she want to get close to the man who kills her in the original story? Then he narrows his eyes as something has finally clicked, stares at her for a long moment, and points straight at her, asking if she is not the infamous mad young lady of the Langride Empire. And just like that, things somehow manage to get worse. The moment Caden calls her a madwoman, Margaret is instantly offended. She cannot believe the nerve. Things get worse when he casually reaches out and touches her hair, commenting that it is the same color as someone he knows. She slaps his hand away immediately and fires back that it is incredibly rude to call a delicate lady a madwoman. Thankfully, the last time he actually saw the real Margaret was years ago during a brief visit to the Floan estate, so there is a real chance he does not fully recognize her. She takes advantage of that and asks who he is. He introduces himself as Caden Blake Enochson and asks if she knows him. When she denies being Lady Floan, he looks genuinely relieved. And then, because nothing can ever just be fine, he casually admits that he absolutely despises that woman. Suddenly, this stops feeling like an awkward encounter and starts feeling genuinely dangerous. Unlike Enoch, Caden is someone who could actually kill her if things go sideways. So our girl watches him carefully, and things get even stranger when he suddenly goes quiet and leans closer, commenting that she smells sweet. Every alarm bell in her head goes off at once. The moment she sees he is distracted, she shoves him away and takes off running. He gives chase immediately, and she knows she cannot afford to get caught. Even if he does not hurt her today, there is always tomorrow. Reaching a cliff, she makes a desperate call and uses a rope to swing across, terrified and shaking the entire way. Surviving beside someone like Caden feels impossible. Honestly, dealing with Enoch is already more than enough. Meanwhile, Caden just stands there watching her disappear, genuinely stunned. He even wonders out loud if she is actually some kind of delicate, noble lady, because nobody runs away that desperately unless they are terrified. Fair observation, honestly. Back with our girl, she finally stops beneath a tree to catch her breath, telling herself there is absolutely no way he followed her this far. But then she notices something still clutched in her hand. During all the chaos, she accidentally grabbed Caden's belongings and bolted with them. Great. That might actually explain why he chased her so hard. But there is a bigger problem already forming. The sun is getting low, which means monsters will be active soon. Going back to the cave would expose the shelter, and Enoch is injured and alone back there. She tells herself not to worry about him and to focus on surviving first. Meanwhile, while searching for somewhere to hide, she spots a small space under a rocky overhang and decides it will do until the night passes. But the second she crawls underneath, she bumps straight into something solid. Margaret freezes completely. She looks down and her heart skips an entire beat. There is only one thought running through her mind right now. Wait a second, do not tell me this is... Margaret nearly screams, but this time it is pure relief. Tucked beneath that rocky shelter is a first aid box. And not just anyone. This is the exact medical kit Yuana found in the original story. For the first time since arriving on this cursed island, our girl actually feels hopeful. She tears it open and finds everything inside. Iodine, Tylenol, fever reducers, headache pills, and more. Her memories are still mixing with Margaret's, so it takes her a second to properly recognize the Korean writing, but none of that matters right now. With this, she can finally treat Enoch properly. Honestly, this is the first real lucky break she has gotten since the whole nightmare began. And naturally, the island cannot let her have even one peaceful moment. Something nearby suddenly makes her freeze. The aura alone is terrifying. A creature lunges at her without warning, and she barely dodges in time, scrambling into the cave to hide. At first, she desperately hopes it will just pass, but the footsteps sound wrong. Too deliberate, too focused, like something is actively searching for her. For one horrible second, she wonders if Caden somehow followed her all the way here. But when the thing moves closer and she finally gets a proper look, her stomach drops. Massive legs, black fur, and a size that no human could ever match. There is no person. It is a monster. And of course, it had to show up right when things were finally looking up. The creature slowly lowers itself toward the cave entrance while Margaret barely manages to stay silent, completely convinced she is about to get eaten alive. Yeah, this island just keeps getting worse. Somehow, after what feels like an eternity, it finally loses interest and walks away. Shaken, she takes a moment to process what just happened, and something does not sit right. That thing looks nothing like the monsters described in the original novel. She remembers mentions of monsters evolving and mutating over time, and suddenly, the dots start connecting. Even the wolf from before had been changing. The island itself is far more dangerous than the story ever let on, and that realization hits hard, because now she has to seriously ask herself whether surviving this place is even possible. She pushes the thought aside and rushes back toward the cave with the medicine, already calling out for Enoch. But the second she arrives, her heart drops. He is gone. She drops the first aid kit and starts calling his name, genuinely shocked that he would leave on his own. Then the dark thoughts start flooding in. Did he meet Yuana while she was away? If he had found the heroine, walking away from someone like her would have been easy. She cannot even blame him for it. She starts convincing herself that if Enoch is gone, then she should just find the underground bunker alone, like she originally planned. But right as she turns to leave, a figure appears at the cave entrance. She freezes. It is Enoch, holding his chest and calling her name. The moment Margaret turns around and sees Enoch standing there, she lets out a massive sigh of relief. She genuinely thought he had already left her behind. Trying to play it cool, she tells him it is good to see his condition has improved. But then she notices that intense glare, and of course, her mind immediately jumps to the worst conclusion. Does he think she abandoned him? Before he can even say anything, she quickly explains herself, reminding him she only left to search for herbs and proudly showing off the first aid kit as if it were the greatest discovery in human history. To her, it basically is. Enoch has no idea what a jackpot means, though, so she awkwardly corrects herself and says she simply found something useful. Then she kneels down and offers to treat whatever injuries he might still have. But instead of responding normally, he suddenly grabs her hand and tells her never to do something like that again, insisting he will not get hurt and that she should stop risking her life over him. And honestly, Margaret is completely thrown off by how serious he sounds. Now they are both kneeling close together inside the cave, and the atmosphere shifts into something unexpectedly soft. She starts panicking internally because this is definitely not how the male lead was supposed to treat her. Then the story flashes back to the previous night. After waking up alone, Enoch notices that his wounds were already treated with strips torn from Margaret's own dress, and that alone had genuinely shocked him. He never imagined a spoiled noble lady could even handle something like that. And just like that, she keeps surprising him without even trying. Back in the flashback, Enoch had sat there piecing together the patterns of the island. Monsters never appeared during the day, but the moment darkness fell, they attacked without fail. which meant Margaret was out there wandering alone during the most dangerous window possible. Normally, he would never risk his life searching for someone like her. In the original story, he despised her. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized she never once hesitated to help him, even when he treated her coldly. If she had not been there, he might already be dead. That realization completely messed with his head. He even found himself regretting the harsh things he said to her earlier. After all, she woke up in this unfamiliar place too, with nobody to rely on, yet instead of protecting herself, she kept showing up for him. That night, searching through the forest, Enoch caught himself desperately praying for her safety. Back in the present, Margaret softly calls out to him again, still using his title. Enoch immediately stops her and quietly tells her that from now on, she should just call him Enoch instead. Margaret is completely caught off guard because Enoch is suddenly acting way too nice, and honestly, it is starting to feel suspicious. One minute, this man could barely stand her existence, and now he is staring into her eyes like she is the most important person on the island. Our girl is confused and keeps telling herself there is no way the original Enoch would ever treat Margaret like this, unless the stress of survival is seriously messing with his head. Meanwhile, he gently grabs her face after noticing she zoned out, and immediately asks who hurt her and why she feels hot. And she is just standing there, wondering what on earth happened to this man overnight. She brushes it off and tells him not to worry, even throwing his own earlier words back at him by saying she would only become a nuisance for both of them anyway. That line hits him harder than expected. Bro just freezes on his knees, staring at her like she shattered something inside him. But Margaret forces herself not to care too much because survival has to come first right now. So instead of letting the moment get emotional, she pivots straight to food, because they are literally starving out here. Honestly, priorities first before romance and mental breakdowns. That finally snaps things back to reality, and she tells him they need to hunt after treating his wounds. A few hours later, Margaret carefully patches Enoch up using the survival kit, warning him it will sting a little before getting it done quickly and cleanly. He looks genuinely impressed, which honestly says a lot from a man who barely trusted her before. But then he notices something. He cannot read a single word on the medicine bottles, yet she knows exactly what everything does. That immediately puts her on edge. How is she supposed to explain Korean survival medicine in a fantasy empire? She improvises fast, telling him it is a language from an eastern continent she once studied. He accepts it surprisingly easily, and she exhales internally because that was dangerously close. Still, one question lingers. Why would someone place a Korean survival kit on this island in the first place? At this point, the island itself is starting to feel more unsettling than the monsters. When he asks about the wound on her face, she decides there is no point in hiding the fact that she met Caden. She explains that while they were struggling, a pendant from his robe hit her cheekbone after falling off. The explanation sounds ridiculous even to her. The moment Enoch hears it, his entire mood changes. Bro looks ready to eliminate someone and then proceeds to lift a massive rock with his bare hands like it weighs nothing. She shows him the pendant she accidentally grabbed while escaping, and the second he sees the crest of the magic tower, he figures it out immediately. Then Margaret carefully asks whether he suffers seizures whenever he sees blood. He is visibly caught off guard, but she explains that if they are traveling together, she needs to understand the risks. After a moment of silence, he finally admits it, explaining that the seizures started after the war and stayed controlled at the palace through constant treatment. But here's the thing that is messing with her head. During his violent episode earlier, he actually calmed down the moment she shouted at him to stop. In the original story, those outbursts only ended when he completely collapsed from exhaustion. Yet her voice stopped him almost immediately. She replays the moment over and over, and Enoch himself quietly confirms that when she told him to stop, it actually worked. Margaret freezes completely. Because in the original novel, the only person capable of calming Enoch during moments like that was supposed to be Yuana. Not her. Never her. And just like that, the story is rewriting itself in ways nobody planned for. Enoch is completely stunned by what he just realized. Back when he was a child, fighting viciously against his siblings just to survive, back when he watched comrades fall on the battlefield, nobody ever told him to stop. Nobody pulled him back when he was breaking apart. Nobody cared enough to try. And maybe that is exactly why Margaret's words hit differently. He quietly explains that ever since the Battle of Roma, the memories have stayed painfully vivid, and whenever he sees blood, he loses control completely. Then, just to prove it, he cuts his own arm without hesitation. Margaret immediately panics and shouts at him to stop, and just like before, his body reacts instantly. The violent tension drains out of him almost immediately, and he quietly exhales in relief. That moment hits our girl hard, because it finally sinks in just how alone Enoch has been this entire time. Carrying trauma this heavy, and not a single person ever stayed long enough to help him through it. Honestly, that hits different when you really sit with it. Enoch quietly admits that if there really is a way to suppress his seizures, it might be the exact words she used. And that completely unsettles Margaret. In the original story, Yuana solved this through physical intimacy, and even that never truly healed him. It only suppressed the trauma temporarily. But Margaret's words alone are calming him down, and that is dangerous, because someone as proud as Enoch would hate the idea of being emotionally dependent on another person. She quickly tells him it is at least a relief they found something that works, but if he ever thinks blood might be involved, he should stay far away from her. Before she can finish, he suddenly apologizes for earlier, then steps closer and gently touches the injury on her face, telling her she should treat herself too. Our girl immediately short-circuits because this man is standing way too close again. He asks about the strange man one more time. She repeats her story, and he firmly warns her never to wander alone again until they escape the island. Meanwhile, she is already lying through her teeth internally because now that she has encountered Caden, simply surviving beside Enoch is no longer enough. She needs to find that bunker before everything spirals. Unfortunately, her body finally gives out after everything she has been through, and Margaret ends up bedridden for days with a terrible stomachache. Even then, she forces herself to build a makeshift water filtration system using coconut shells and strips from her dress, slowly dripping moisture into a lower container before boiling it safely. Honestly, watching her become a full survival expert in real time is something else. And while she sits there exhausted, she realizes Enoch has been quietly taking care of her this whole time. For the first time, she genuinely wonders if he is starting to trust her, and whether staying beside him might not be such a bad idea after all. But she shuts that thought down immediately. Because what happens when he eventually meets the heroine? What if everything snaps back to the original story? She hardens her resolve and refocuses on finding the bunker. Right then, Enoch appears carrying fish and tells her he thought he had ordered her to rest. She stubbornly insists they still need food. They start heading back together, but he suddenly stops walking, and she bumps straight into his back. Annoyed, she asks why he froze. Then she looks ahead too. Standing right in front of them is Caden. The moment Enoch recognizes him, his expression darkens instantly. So it is you, bastard. The second Enoch recognizes Caden, and the atmosphere turns dangerous instantly. Caden rolls up his sleeves like he is ready to throw hands on sight, and these two look seconds away from destroying each other. But before things can explode, Margaret jumps in and begs Enoch to wait. He pauses and asks if Caden is the owner of the pendant she showed him earlier. She confirms it, while Caden, still half collapsed on the ground, looks completely confused because he thought he lost that pendant a long time ago. Enoch wastes absolutely no time and calmly suggests they tie Caden up immediately because he might be dangerous. Margaret is shocked that he said that so casually, but before she can argue, she notices the sun already beginning to set. And that is far more terrifying than either of these two men right now, because once darkness falls, the monsters come out. Just then, Caden suddenly grabs Margaret's arm and pulls her toward him. Enoch reacts instantly, asking if she is all right and looking 1 second away from murdering somebody. She quickly reassures him that Caden only startled her, but when she tries pulling her hand free, Enoch notices the red mark left on her wrist. And bro immediately goes full murder mode, straight up asking if she wants him to kill Caden for leaving a mark on her. Margaret is horrified and tells him to calm down because this is not normal behavior. Thankfully, he actually listens. The moment she firmly tells him to control his anger, he kneels, steadies himself, and quietly agrees if that is truly what she wants. And honestly, that only unsettles her more. At this point, she is basically manually operating the male lead like a dangerous machine. Eventually, Enoch recognizes Caden properly as one of the continent's 5 archmages and decides that dragging him back to the hideout makes more sense since his knowledge could still prove useful. He insists Caden stays tied up the entire time. And honestly, nobody is arguing with that. Margaret also notices that Enoch is technically asking for her opinion now, which says a lot about how much his trust in her has grown. She knows if she refuses, he will probably just carry Caden there by force anyway, so she agrees. But once they get him inside, the severity of his injuries hits her hard. The wounds covering his body are horrifying, and she immediately starts wondering if the violent magical disturbance they sensed earlier in the forest actually came from him. And of course, things get worse almost immediately. The moment Caden starts waking up, Enoch loses control and goes straight for him. Margaret panics and throws herself between them, shouting for him to stop. Just like every time before, it actually works. Even with all that monstrous strength behind him, he freezes the second she firmly orders him to calm down. She practically pins him in place until he finally settles and falls asleep. Sitting there in exhausted relief afterward, she cannot stop wondering how the original heroine ever survived managing all of this without completely losing her mind. Honestly, at this point, our girl deserves a medal just for still being sane. Enoch finally wakes up, looking shaken, asking what exactly he did while out of control. Margaret quickly tells him to calm down and starts untying the ropes around his wrists and legs, reassuring him that everything is fine. But instead of worrying about himself, this man looks straight at her and quietly asks whether she is hurt. She assumes he means Caden and explains that she already treated his wounds using the first aid kit, so the archmage should recover soon. Then Enoch gently places his hand against her face and corrects her, saying he was asking about her injuries, not that midge. Yeah, this man is very clearly prioritizing her now, and even Margaret cannot hide how thrown off she is. She brushes it off and says she is fine, but he casually follows it up by saying that if she ever wants Caden gone, she only has to say the word because getting rid of him would not even be difficult. And honestly, that sentence alone is terrifying. There is still a dangerous sharpness hiding underneath his calm, and she cannot tell anymore whether he is truly stable or simply forcing himself to stay composed. When she nervously asks if he is planning another violent episode, he coldly replies that it would actually make things easier. And just like that, she starts wondering if Enoch from the original novel is slowly surfacing again. Still, despite everything, she had stayed up all night treating Caden's injuries after he collapsed, watching over him until his breathing finally sounded stable. He still could not fully wake up by the next day, so they decide to leave him temporarily while scouting near the cave. Our girl is already mentally mapping the island again, remembering that the bunker and cabin from the original story were hidden floneath a giant mountain near steep cliffs. The problem is that 3 mountains on the island match that description, So they start with the one she and Enoch climbed first. Unfortunately, the heat that day was absolutely brutal. Her vision starts turning yellowish, and before she can steady herself, she stumbles forward. Enoch catches her instantly, and while grabbing onto him, she accidentally notices the countless old battlefield scars running across his arms. Deep ones. For a second, she just stares, because those marks make it painfully obvious how much this man has survived alone. Then she realizes they are still holding hands and immediately jerks away in embarrassment, blaming it on the heat. Enoch stands there completely confused while she panics internally. Honestly, these two are acting married already, and neither of them realizes it. And as if that was not enough, the moment he notices how exhausted she looks, he lifts her into his arms without hesitation. She protests immediately, but he calmly explains that she is going to collapse before they reach safety and that there is a stream nearby where she can cool off. By the time they reach it, the cool air already feels like relief, and Enoch quietly tells her he will stand guard while she washes up, turning his back respectfully and telling her to call if she needs anything. Unfortunately, the second Enoch turns around mid-sentence, he accidentally catches flashes of her skin as she cleans herself in the water, and Bro completely short-circuits on the spot. Margaret casually asks what he was saying, while this man suddenly cannot form a proper sentence to save his life. He awkwardly tells her to just call if she needs anything, then immediately starts scolding himself internally for even having thoughts like that about a noble lady. He is genuinely trying to hold it together. And then it gets worse. While he is busy losing the battle against his own brain, Margaret suddenly grabs onto his clothes from behind. The second he turns around, she innocently asks if he can help undo the button at her back because she cannot reach it herself. Enoch freezes completely. Margaret is already dying from embarrassment after asking Enoch to unbutton her dress, and honestly, she only asked because she had absolutely no choice. That dress is the only thing she owns right now, so if it gets soaked, she is finished. Meanwhile, Enoch is standing there staring at her back like his brain just stopped functioning. She gets even more flustered and quietly begs him again, and he finally reaches over to help. But instead of acknowledging the completely chaotic situation they are both in, this man randomly asks what she wants to do first after leaving the island. Margaret tells him she wants a proper bath with soap and a real formal dinner, because according to Margaret's memories, the meals at the Floan estate were incredible, and those memories feel like hers now, too. Still, deep down, she misses Korea more. Even with no family there, no friends, nobody waiting for her, it was still home. She asks him the same question, and this man gives the driest answer imaginable. She calls him out immediately, and then Enoch suddenly gets weirdly smooth and tells her that if he answered honestly, she would be the one in trouble. Before she can even process what that means, he lightly touches her back and casually mentions he finished unbuttoning the dress a while ago. Our girl nearly malfunctions completely. She immediately yells at him not to turn around and launches herself straight into the water while he casually apologizes with a smile, as if he did not just attack her heart out of nowhere. Yeah, I saw that coming from a mile away. Anyway, while Margaret is finally getting a moment to relax in the cold stream for once, she remembers they still have scouting to finish before sunset. So she gets ready to leave, only to realize her dress is completely gone. Panic kicks in immediately, and she calls for Enoch, asking where he put it. He is just as confused because he never touched it. And the second she says the dress disappeared, the entire mood shifts. Someone else has to be nearby. Enoch hears movement in the forest and tells her to stay put while he goes to check, leaving our girl standing there, losing her mind over what kind of insane situation this even is. Then Enoch spots someone sprinting through the trees carrying the dress. Without a single second of hesitation, he charges forward, grabs the guy, slams him down hard, and presses a stick against his neck before coldly pointing out that there are definitely some interesting fish on this island he has not seen in a long time. And the person holding the dress? Diego. Of course, it was not going to be simple. It never is on this island. Diego immediately starts panicking and begs Enoch to wait, but Bro is absolutely not in the mood. The stick stays pressed against his neck while Enoch coldly asks why the commander of the Imperial Guard, who is supposed to be back in the Empire, is suddenly running around on a deserted island stealing dresses like a lunatic. Diego quickly explains that during training, he blacked out and woke up near a riverbank, with no memory of what happened, and apparently the exact same thing happened to everyone with him too. Once Enoch finally lowers the weapon, Diego gets up, thanks him respectfully, and asks how he ended up here. Same story. One moment, he is walking through the Imperial Palace. The next, he is stranded on a nightmare island crawling with monsters. Then Diego drops something huge. He is not alone. Crown Prince Arthdal and Bishop Ruzef are also trapped here. The moment Enoch hears that, everything shifts. Too many important figures from both the Langride Empire and the Hestia Kingdom are gathered in one place for this to be any kind of coincidence. And then comes the part that truly unsettles him. If even the Saintess herself got dragged here, then whatever is happening on this island is beyond human control entirely. Diego finally admits the stolen clothes were meant for Yuana, but Enoch shuts that down immediately. That dress is the only thing Margaret owns right now, and if Yuana already has something on her back, there is absolutely no excuse for taking someone else's. Enoch was completely right for that one. Diego has no comeback and quietly hands it over. Before letting him leave, Enoch orders him to meet secretly every 10 days and report anything useful immediately. But most importantly, he warns Diego to stay completely out of Margaret's sight. One wrong move, and he will not be so calm about it next time. Meanwhile, our girl is still freezing in the stream, shaking and wondering which shameless pervert stole her dress in the first place. She is literally trembling at this point and can already feel her body threatening to give out. Just when things start looking truly miserable, she suddenly hears Enoch's voice calling her name, and the relief on her face is immediate the second he walks back holding the dress. She gets so happy she almost collapses right there, thanking him, but unfortunately her body has already hit its absolute limit. The cold, the exhaustion, the hunger, all of it crashes down at once. The second she tries to move, dizziness slams into her hard and she slips straight into the water. Enoch rushes forward instantly and catches her before she goes completely under. Our girl can barely think straight anymore, finally realizing her stamina is far worse than she ever gave herself credit for. And honestly, after everything she has been through today, nobody can even be surprised. A few hours later, Margaret wakes up inside the cave, completely confused about why she is lying down, and Enoch immediately notices she is awake. This man genuinely looks relieved. Bro has clearly been stressed the entire time. The moment she sits up, he suddenly apologizes out of nowhere, which completely throws her off. Apparently, after she collapsed, she developed a fever, and while trying to help her, he realized he had absolutely no idea which medicine to use from the first aid kit. And honestly, the image of Enoch, the terrifying crown prince who fights monsters barehanded, sitting there feeling completely useless over cold medicine is strangely adorable. She quickly tells him it is not his fault, but then realizes she is already dressed again. The second she asks where the dress came from, he casually reveals he found Diego. That immediately throws her off because Diego is supposed to be this upright knight obsessed with honor and discipline, yet somehow this same man stole a sick woman's clothes. His chivalry really did disappear at record speed. Enoch explains that since Diego is technically his subordinate, he feels responsible and even offers to drag him back personally if she wants an apology. Our girl immediately shuts that down and says she will handle revenge herself later. And for some reason, that answer makes Enoch smile before patting her head like she is some mischievous puppy. She is completely caught off guard by how gentle he is being. But deep down, something uncomfortable settles in. That warmth actually feels nice, maybe because nobody has ever treated her that tenderly before. And honestly, that quiet realization might be more dangerous than anything else on this island. Anyway, she quickly changes the subject and asks whether Diego mentioned anyone else on the island. Enoch explains they decided not to move together for now since Diego's group is just as clueless, but agreed to exchange information secretly every 10 days. Honestly, smartest decision either of them has made so far. But then Margaret suddenly remembers something horrifying. She was definitely only wearing her underclothes beneath that dress. The second she brings it up, Enoch completely freezes before awkwardly coughing and admitting he changed her clothes himself. Bro immediately starts defending himself, insisting he tried not to look. Margaret asks the real question though. Did he actually look or not? And this man responds by dramatically mourning the loss of his virtue before casually suggesting marriage would solve the whole problem anyway. Yeah, Enoch is absolutely not the same cold man from the beginning anymore. When she points out that he rejected her proposal before, he quietly admits everything is different now. The situation, and her too. That line hits harder than he probably realizes, because deep down, she knows he is talking about the old Margaret, not who she actually is now. Before things get even more awkward, she asks about Caden, and Enoch says his fever finally seems to have broken. Relieved, she tells him to rest, and eventually drifts off to sleep nearby. But just when things finally feel calm, something heavy suddenly pins her down in the middle of the night. Before she can even scream, a hand covers her mouth. And right there in the darkness is Caden, staring straight at her and warning her not to wake the crown prince. Then this man casually drops a bombshell, calling her Margaret directly and asking why she lied to him. Caden keeps staring at Margaret in the dark, asking why she lied about her identity. Apparently, this has been eating at him the entire time. He even admits that if she had revealed she was Lady Floan when they first met, he might have seriously done something dangerous to her. Yeah, this guy is unhinged, but at least he is honest about it. What really confuses him, though, is that even though she has the exact same face as before, she feels completely different now. And then, because things can never just be normal, Bro casually admits the current version of her is actually more his type. Before things can get any weirder, Caden suddenly gets kicked clean off her. Enoch had apparently been awake long enough to hear more than enough nonsense. The moment Caden looks up, coughing, Enoch is already staring down at him like he is one wrong word away from murder. Caden sarcastically points out how impressive it is that the crown prince is defending Lady Floan of all people, and Enoch immediately snaps back, asking what kind of person attacks someone who literally saved their life. That is when Caden finally realizes something. Margaret was the one who treated his wounds. Meanwhile, Enoch is already irritated just hearing Caden say her name so casually, and warns him immediately not to speak to her so familiarly. The tension between these two is genuinely dangerous. One wrong sentence and somebody is getting stabbed tonight. Margaret jumps in quickly before things explode and asks Caden where those terrible injuries even came from. Monsters, apparently. But despite everything, he still admits he is relieved she survived. And honestly, that completely catches her off guard, because this is still the same man who hated Margaret enough to kill her in the original story. People really do change when survival is on the line. Things get even stranger when Margaret returns the pendant she accidentally took from him earlier. Caden explains that the gem is actually a mana vessel passed down through generations of Tower Lords. Basically an urn containing the concentrated mana of ancient mages from centuries ago. The power sealed inside is apparently destructive enough to wipe out an entire nation, but luckily, Nobody can release it anymore since the mage who created it died over 1,000 years ago. But then Caden suddenly shifts the topic and asks how the two of them ended up on the island. Neither side really answers, and after a moment, he reveals his own theory. He believes there is some kind of escape gate hidden somewhere on the island. The second those words land, both Margaret and Enoch go completely still, because unlike everyone else who has been focused purely on surviving, Caden is already approaching the whole situation like a mage solving a puzzle. Margaret instantly realizes he might already be closer to uncovering the island's secrets than anyone else here. And then this absolute lunatic stretches his hand out toward her and casually asks if she wants to come with him instead. The moment those words leave his mouth, both Margaret and Enoch look furious, for completely different reasons. The second Caden makes his offer, Enoch immediately steps between them and shuts it down fast. Bro is not even trying to hide how irritated he is anymore. He grabs Margaret's hand, pulls her behind him, and tells Caden to stop talking nonsense and leave her alone. Honestly, our girl is secretly relieved because she had absolutely no intention of following that walking red flag anyway, and had been quietly panicking about how to reject him without getting herself killed. So, for once, Enoch's terrifying possessiveness actually works in her favor. Meanwhile, Caden just watches the two of them leave with that same completely unreadable expression, which somehow makes him even creepier. And unfortunately, this man does not give up. Days pass, food supplies start running low, the cave gets more miserable by the day, and Caden still refuses to leave. Enoch literally throws him outside at one point, and this lunatic spends 2 entire nights sitting awake directly in front of the cave entrance like some obsessed guard dog. Margaret quickly realizes this guy is operating on a completely different level of insanity. Going outside at night is basically an open invitation for monsters, yet there he is, completely still, just watching the cave without moving. Anyway, while both men continue acting increasingly unhinged around her, Margaret decides to focus on what actually matters: finding the bunker or cabin hidden somewhere on this island. It has already been 3 whole weeks since they got stranded, and despite Enoch secretly exchanging information with Diego every 10 days, nobody has discovered a real escape method yet. Survival itself is becoming exhausting. Still, things have improved enough that even overprotective Enoch finally lets her wander alone before sunset. So while scouting near the mountains, she stops to drink water and tries to think clearly. If she cannot find clues this time either, they may have to abandon the area completely. But just when she is about to head back down, she spots something buried nearby: a gun. And not just any gun, but some strange red pistol she has never seen before, definitely not in the original story. It even has bullets inside, which completely shocks her, because firearms were never supposed to exist here. Naturally, our girl immediately gets curious and starts fiddling with it. The trigger seems broken at first, and she gets disappointed for about 2 seconds, then pulls it again, and the gun fires instantly. The deafening shot echoes across the entire island, and she freezes in horror because she already knows exactly what that sound just attracted: wolves. A whole pack of them. Margaret is already running for her life while trying to process the absolute insanity she just witnessed. That weird red flare gun somehow exploded in the sky like fireworks, which should not even be possible with a normal flare gun in the first place. And instead of helping her, it basically rang the dinner bell for every monster in the area. Now she is sprinting through the forest with beasts charging from every direction. She manages to shake most of them off and keeps pushing forward until she suddenly spots someone standing ahead like a complete idiot, totally unaware of the chaos closing in around him. She immediately starts screaming at him to move, but this guy just stands there, confused, while monsters are literally charging toward them. So she grabs him herself and drags him into a run. While sprinting, the stranger notices the monsters gathering because of the strange explosion, and Margaret quickly explains that magic does not even work on this island, meaning whatever she fired was not magic at all. That only makes the flare gun even creepier, honestly. But with monsters closing in again, she comes up with a desperate plan and tells the stranger to hit the ground the moment she gives the signal. He has absolutely no idea what she means, but listens anyway. The second they both drop, she fires again, and the explosion engulfs the monsters in flames. Against all odds, they survive. When the smoke finally clears, the stranger reveals himself properly. Long sky blue hair, holy aura, ridiculously handsome. Of course it is. Archbishop Luger, one of the 12 priests and a future pope candidate. And the very first thing this man does after being saved is ask if she is a witch. Yeah, all the male leads in this story genuinely have something wrong with them. Naturally, Margaret gets offended immediately and asks if that is seriously how he thanks someone who just saved his life. Archbishop Luger quickly apologizes, but then suddenly recognizes her as Lady Floan, which instantly sends her straight into panic mode, because this is yet another terrible matchup from the original story. Apparently, the old Margaret constantly harassed him over love potion experiments and even funded dangerous research involving them. The second he mentions love potions, our girl internally knows another bad ending flag just activated. Desperate, she denies being Lady Floan, but he keeps pressing and even accuses her of kidnapping him to the island. At that point, she realizes logic is completely useless here, so she activates her final survival strategy, out-yelling the other person until they surrender. She starts screaming about how rude he is, insists she is not Lady Floan, reminds him she literally just saved his life, and aggressively demands gratitude until Archbishop Luger completely loses control of the entire conversation. This poor priest ends up apologizing while getting absolutely steamrolled by a woman he still thinks might be insane. Then she goes even further and orders him to bow properly and thank her for saving him. And unbelievably, he actually does it. The moment Archbishop Luger lowers his head, our girl immediately sees her window and starts preparing to disappear before things get worse. She is already convinced she somehow fooled him completely. But knowing how this island operates, there is absolutely no way things are staying that simple. By the time Margaret finally makes it back to the cave, she is completely mentally drained. At this point, her original plan to avoid all the male leads has fully collapsed. She has already met 3 of them, and honestly, that plan was doomed from the start, considering she crashed straight into the main lead the moment she arrived. Still, one thing keeps nagging at her. Why was Archbishop Luger wandering around the mountainside alone right before sunset? That already sounds suspicious on an island like this. But before she can dig into that thought, she hears Enoch calling her name. The second she sees him, she rushes over trying to explain herself. But Enoch suddenly pulls her into a tight hug before she can even get a word out. And this completely catches her off guard. She can barely breathe while this man squeezes the life out of her. Apparently, he saw the flare explosion in the sky and genuinely thought she had died. And honestly, hearing that breaks something inside her instantly. Over everything they have survived together, his embrace has become strangely familiar, and the moment she feels that warmth and relief, all the fear she had been holding in finally crashes down at once. She starts tearing up and just blurts everything out. The fireworks from the flare gun, the monsters chasing her, almost dying, and even meeting Archbishop Luger. Back then, she was too focused on surviving to feel any of it properly, but now that she is finally safe, the terror hits her all at once. Later, while Enoch treats the wounds on her leg, she complains that it hurts, and he calmly tells her to endure it. Then she notices the cave is completely wrecked and asks what happened. This man just casually replies that it simply is. Absolutely useless answer. When she asks where Caden went, Enoch reveals he actually went searching for her in the middle of the night, which genuinely shocks her because that is practically suicide on this island. She tries explaining that she only lost track of time hiking and that the flare accidentally attracted the monsters, but the more she talks, the guiltier she feels. Yet instead of blaming her, Enoch suddenly turns it on himself. He says he should have created a safer environment so she would not need to risk going outside, and that he keeps failing to protect her properly. Margaret immediately shuts that down because none of this was ever his responsibility. But the way he is acting now feels completely different from before. This is no longer a simple duty or noble chivalry. Something about him has genuinely shifted. So when she tells him to stop prioritizing her safety over his own, he agrees without hesitation, and quietly admits that without her, he genuinely would not survive alone on this island. And that answer unsettles her more than anything else, because in the original story, the person Enoch was supposed to rely on was Yuana, not her. Yet here he is, looking at Margaret like she is becoming essential to him. And when he quietly takes her hand and admits he worries about her constantly, our girl starts realizing this story may already be changing in ways that go far deeper than she ever expected. Enoch suddenly admits he is really concerned about her too, and that line immediately throws Margaret off. Concerned about her too. Me too. Her mind spirals instantly because she assumes he still thinks she has feelings for him, and honestly, she remembers how the original Margaret acted, constantly clinging, constantly overstepping. Living together on this island did create some kind of bond, sure, but in her head it is nothing deep. Just basic familiarity and gratitude built from survival. So she tries to shut it down fast. Of course you would feel concern for someone you like, she says, keeping it clean and logical. But Enoch does not accept that so easily. He steps closer instead, and suddenly the entire energy shifts. She expected him to back off after being rejected that clearly, not move forward like this. That is when she tries again, more serious this time, reminding him they agreed not to get caught up in false emotions and that anything more would only become a problem for both of them. She pushes it like a firm boundary. Like logic should be enough to win here, but something tells me logic stopped working on this man a long time ago. But instead of agreeing, Enoch looks shaken, almost hurt. And that reaction hits her back harder than expected, because she realizes those words came from her too. She tries to recover the situation quickly, insisting that survival comes first and everything else can wait. I should have stopped talking there, because now the air between them turns heavy and uncomfortable. Enoch quietly says he needs to leave, and she agrees. Both of them clearly stuck in emotions neither of them knows how to handle. But just when she thinks she finally gets a break, Caden shows up again. Of course he does. This man has been relentlessly searching through the forest, and instead of anger, he actually sounds relieved that she is safe. Then casually drops that while she was gone, some strange magic circle appeared, and Enoch was basically panicking like a madman looking for her. Margaret freezes because he heard everything. Every awkward second of it. And before she can even react properly, Caden steps closer, grabs her face, and drops another bomb that he has developed an interest in her too. And at this point, it is not even drama anymore. It is just chaos stacking on chaos. Margaret just stands there for a second. Like her brain completely refuses to process what she just heard. Seriously, did these two coordinate this behind her back? Because why are both Enoch and Caden suddenly acting like this on the exact same day? She snaps out of it fast and goes straight at Caden, telling him to stop joking around. Why is he even looking at her like that? When did she ever give him any reason to feel this way? She reminds him bluntly that they barely know each other, that he literally spoke to her with contempt before, and now he is suddenly talking about feelings like any of this makes sense. It does not. And then Caden actually goes quiet. No argument, no attitude, just silence. Then he apologizes, properly. He admits he misjudged her at first, thought she was deceiving him, but after watching her on this island, she is nothing like the rumors or the person he expected. Because of that, he has become curious, interested, drawn to her in a way he cannot fully control. His tone is calm, but the words are serious enough to feel completely real, and somehow that makes it even more uncomfortable for her. Still, Margaret refuses to get pulled in. She cuts it off, saying it does not matter anyway since he does not even like her properly, and probably will not in the future either. That is when Caden mentions the earring. She pauses instantly, because she knows exactly what that means. It is supposed to regulate his emotions, and right now it is broken. So whatever he is feeling is not coming from a stable place at all. She connects it immediately. This is unstable emotion talking, not genuine feeling. So she tries to step back from it mentally and physically, reminding herself this is exactly why she should not get involved. Once the female lead appears, everything will fall back into its original place anyway. But Caden does not let it end there. He grabs her hand, calm but stubborn, and tells her that whatever this is, it is still his feeling, and therefore his decision. Then he kisses her hand like it is the simplest thing in the world. That finally breaks her composure completely. She yanks her hand back, calls him selfish without hesitation, and walks away. But even as she leaves, her mind is anything but calm. Because now Enoch acting strange, Caden acting even worse, and both of them looking at her like she has somehow become central to something she never agreed to be part of. Surviving the monsters was honestly the easier part of this island. Enoch and Caden are both sitting near the campfire when Margaret walks back in, still recovering from everything she went through. Enoch immediately notices her and asks how she is feeling. She answers that she is fine, even though she literally spent 4 days stuck in bed after that chaotic mountain incident. In her mind, she is already mapping out a plan to rebuild her stamina because clearly her body is way weaker than she ever realized. Enoch casually reaches out and places a hand on her head, checking her temperature like it is the most natural thing in the world, and announces the fever is finally gone. Margaret instantly swats his hand away and insists she is fine. The atmosphere turns slightly awkward, especially with Caden sitting there watching everything silently from the side, like he is studying a very interesting situation. Enoch tells her she should rest more, but she refuses immediately, pointing out that 4 days lying down was already more than enough. These three around one campfire are already the most uncomfortable energy on the entire island. The conversation shifts, and Margaret asks Enoch if he found out anything useful while she was gone. Nothing yet, no rescue progress at all, which already kills her expectations a little. She then turns to Caden, figuring he must have seen more of the island since he has been moving around freely. He says no, he was mostly hunting monsters, which immediately makes her question why anyone would do something that dangerous on purpose. But then Caden drops something more serious. Magic does not work on this island, yet the monsters clearly have mana-based traits. Both Enoch and Margaret react instantly, because that makes absolutely no sense. Enoch adds that while scouting, he also found strange writing carved into a cliff. The word reads Alea, and Caden confirms he saw the same thing, on monsters and rocks too. That alone is already unsettling. Then Margaret hesitantly pulls out the flare gun, the same one that caused the sky explosion earlier. Caden reacts immediately, asking if she was the one who triggered it. She admits it casually, like it barely matters, just something she forgot about after everything else. Enoch wonders if it is some kind of magic tool, but Caden studies it closely and notices faintly engraved formulas, confirming it is far from normal. Then they notice the marking on it also reads Alea, and that only makes things worse, because now it looks like someone deliberately modified it. Caden connects the pieces and says there is a real possibility people lived on this island before them, and maybe still do. Just like that, the entire tone shifts. What started as pure survival has quietly turned into something far more suspicious. Because if someone is still here, then none of them ended up on this island by accident. And honestly, that might be the scariest thing anyone has said since they arrived. Margaret's mind is basically running in circles at this point. The whole Alea thing Caden mentioned keeps looping in her head and refuses to let her settle, because now she is questioning everything. Is this island even real land? Is it some hidden place on Earth, like Korea, or somewhere else entirely? Or is this some strange setup where they are basically trapped like test subjects in an experiment? And then the thoughts get even darker. If this is not Earth at all, then how are modern objects ending up here? And even more disturbing, how did she end up inside Margaret's body in the first place? That one hits too close, so she shuts it down fast. Enoch tries to calm things down, saying they should gather more information before jumping to conclusions. And honestly, he is right. With just fragments, nothing can be confirmed yet. So they agree to drop it for now and start packing up as the sun begins to set. But even while moving, Margaret cannot stop staring at the flare gun. That single word still bothers her. Alea. She even tries pulling up some forgotten memory from her studies, wondering if it is Latin or Greek, but it keeps slipping just out of reach. Sometimes the most unsettling questions are not the ones you can answer, but the ones you cannot stop asking. The next morning, things somehow get even stranger. Caden is already awake when Margaret gets up, casually greeting her like everything is perfectly normal. She is instantly thrown off because seeing him awake that early already feels like a warning sign. Enoch is out getting food, which means it is just the two of them, and that is when she notices it. His clothes are a complete mess, and he looks like he has been out the entire night. He casually explains he went hunting because the wolves were too noisy, as if that is just a standard morning activity. Margaret immediately reads between the lines, though. This is not just him being restless. This is him burning off something internal, the mana instability tied to that broken earring. Without it regulating him, he is basically forcing himself to vent through fighting monsters. And that thought makes her genuinely uneasy, because if he ever loses control completely, there is nothing she can do about it. She even remembers that in the original story, the heroine was supposed to be the one stabilizing him. But that is not her role, and she knows it. Kaden suddenly cuts into her thoughts, asking why she is staring at him like that and joking that she must have fallen for him. She brushes it off immediately and quickly shifts gears, handing him firewood and telling him to get a fire started since Enoch is still out. Kaden pauses, confused, but she is already thinking ahead. If he is going to be unstable, at least keeping him occupied with something useful might help manage it for now. Honestly, our girl has basically become an unofficial caretaker for 2 unhinged male leads, and nobody asked her if that was okay. Kaden just stands there for a moment, completely blank, like he genuinely has no idea what to do with firewood in his hands. And Margaret immediately jumps to a conclusion. Okay, he clearly does not know how to start a fire. She is already trying to recover the situation, thinking maybe she moved too fast and should redirect him to Enoch instead. But Kaden calmly cuts in and says he knows how to do it. That alone shocks her. Because what do you mean, you know how to start a fire? She even laughs it off internally, thinking there is no way someone like him would know basic survival stuff. Then reality hits her immediately. This is Kaden Blake Enochson, described as an omnivorous intellectual in the original story. Of course, he would know everything. She just underestimated him again, and honestly, that is becoming a habit. Kaden casually mentions that if this is some kind of test, he will just go get more firewood. That little comment weirdly irritates her, so she switches gears and says she will go hunt fish instead. He immediately questions it, asking if she is seriously a noble lady planning to go spearing fish right now with that weapon. She fires back that being noble does not stop her from surviving, and honestly, she has a point. He pushes further, pointing out that no proper noble lady would be out here spearing fish in the first place. She actually pauses because, yeah, that is fair. But hunger is hunger. They have basically been surviving on fish and coconuts this entire time, and she has already decided it does not matter anymore. They might need to relocate soon anyway. Just as things settle, a coconut drops nearby and Enoch shows up, having already tied Kaden up again. Margaret is instantly like, what is happening right now? Enoch explains he told Kaden not to loiter around her, while Kaden complains about being treated like some kind of dangerous pest. Everything is chaotic again within seconds. Margaret quickly tells Enoch to stop tying him up because she already gave Kaden a task. Kaden quietly mutters that he is still not doing it properly, and she shuts that down immediately with a simple threat of no food. That fixes everything instantly. Kaden just sighs and asks how much firewood she actually wants, suddenly way more cooperative than before. Margaret is honestly relieved because at least this version of Kaden is manageable. But then Enoch starts acting strange too, insisting she is not a normal noble lady at all, like he is completely convinced there is something more to her. She is thrown off because now Enoch is questioning her the same way Kaden does. When he directly asks about her true self, she panics internally and blurts out something random about survival in jungles and rivers, basically deflecting the whole thing. Then she sends Kaden off to help Enoch and just stands there thinking, this is too smooth. Both of them are getting along far too easily compared to the original story. And honestly, that is exactly what scares her the most. When things start feeling this calm on this island, something is always about to go wrong. Kaden casually mentions that while coming back, he spotted an actual river nearby, and that instantly changes everything. Not a tiny stream like the one Margaret found before, but a real river. The moment she hears that, her survival instincts kick in immediately. She starts listing the advantages right away. More animals gathering to drink means better hunting, and unlike the barren coast they have been stuck on, there should be far more edible fruits and resources nearby. Staying here any longer makes zero sense. She suggests they move. But even while saying it, she is quietly nervous about whether Enoch will agree. The only reason they stayed near the coast this entire time was hope. Hope that a ship might eventually pass and rescue them. But it has already been a full month. No ships, no signals, nothing. At this point, survival has to take priority over waiting for miracles. So she carefully asks him what he thinks about building a shelter near the river instead, laying out her reasoning calmly and even connecting it back to the word Alea, pointing out that moving closer to the interior might bring them closer to answers about escaping the island. Enoch goes quiet for a moment, clearly thinking it through, and then finally agrees. That instantly lifts her mood. Yeah, I would have celebrated too. Before things settle down, both Margaret and Enoch turn toward Kaden at the same time and ask if he is coming too. Kaden immediately looks offended. Why is he the only one being asked separately? Enoch being with Margaret is apparently treated as the most natural thing in the world now. While he is somehow the outsider, Enoch does not help matters either, flat out telling Kaden there was never any space for him to wedge himself between them in the first place. And of course, Kaden just laughs instead of backing off, casually saying they can simply make space if Margaret shifts over a little. At this point, our girl is genuinely wondering if abandoning both of them in the forest would bring her more peace. The next day, they finally move out properly, and by sunset, they arrive at the river Kaden described, a huge, gentle stream cutting through the forest. Margaret immediately decides this is where they will build their new shelter, and this is where things get genuinely funny. The moment she starts explaining how to construct a branch hut, both Enoch and Caden look completely lost, which honestly makes sense. One is a crown prince, and the other is the lord of the magic tower. These men have probably never built anything with their bare hands in their entire lives. So now Margaret is out here running a full survival class, explaining how to position wooden sticks into a triangle for support, how to lay the long frame pieces for the roof, then add branch supports like ribs before covering everything with leaves. The two of them actually listen seriously, which somehow makes the whole situation even stranger. Enoch suggests making it similar to their old beach shelter. Margaret agrees, and then Caden points out that they will need sharper tools for thicker wood. She pauses for exactly 1 second before casually deciding they will just make weapons themselves. At this point, she has fully transformed from noble lady into wilderness survival instructor, and nobody even saw it coming. The moment Margaret starts tying up her hair, both Enoch and Caden just stare at her as she has completely lost her mind. And honestly, from their perspective, she probably had. Our girl casually grabs a rock, smashes it against another one, and starts shaping a sharp stone like some survival expert. A few seconds later, she proudly hands them a makeshift stone axe and tells them to tie it to a stick. Simple, efficient. Meanwhile, Caden is having an existential crisis in real time. Bro cannot let this go. He keeps following her around, asking if she is really Margaret because, apparently, noble ladies from ducal families are not supposed to know how to craft tools, build shelters, and survive in the wilderness. Margaret is already exhausted from his non-stop interrogation and tells him to stop talking and start working before sunset hits. But of course, this research-obsessed mage keeps going. Is there anything she does not know? At this point, even she is getting annoyed. Still, once she spots a sturdy log nearby, her survival instincts immediately kick back in. She orders Caden to help move it, expecting him to struggle because he is a mage, only for this man to casually lift it himself. Yeah, that shocked her too. I would have made him carry everything after that. Anyway, with all three of them working together, they actually managed to build a decent shelter surprisingly fast. It is large enough to fit several people, although Margaret is definitely not thrilled about sleeping cramped together with these two chaotic men. By nighttime, she is way too exhausted to care anymore and just wants rest, but unfortunately, peace is illegal around these people. While everyone is lying down, Caden suddenly leans over and kisses her shoulder out of nowhere. Margaret immediately freaks out because what is wrong with this man? He shamelessly blames it on the shelter being cramped, but before things can get even worse, Enoch suddenly kicks him across the floor. And now the two idiots are arguing in the middle of the shelter about manners, etiquette, and who gets to sleep beside Margaret. Caden insists he should sleep next to her, while Enoch looks ready to throw him into the river. Meanwhile, our girl has completely had enough. She quietly gets up and decides she would rather sleep outside than deal with these lunatics fighting over her all night. That instantly shuts both of them up. The second she starts leaving, they panic and apologize, promising they will stay quiet if she comes back. Yeah, she really ended up babysitting two grown men on a deserted island. The next morning, Caden walks out of the shelter, stretching like he had the best sleep of his life, while Margaret is already crouched beside a pile of charcoal, working quietly. Enoch had gone out hunting again, so naturally, this mage immediately wanders over, asking what she is doing. She explains that regular firewood is terrible for roasting meat properly, so she needs charcoal instead. And now Caden is just standing there staring at her so intensely that our girl starts feeling like he is about to burn a hole through her face with his eyes alone. When she asks if he needs something, this man casually says he just wants to move his body a little, because if he stays idle any longer, he might go hunt monsters again. Yeah, absolutely not. Margaret instantly realizes he still does not understand why physical activity calms him down in the first place. Since his mana used to regulate naturally before the earring broke, he probably never noticed the connection. But whether he understands it or not, letting him rampage around hunting monsters is a disaster waiting to happen. So instead, she lightly taps his chest and tells him to take over hunting wild animals from now on. Caden immediately catches on and accuses her of assigning him chores because she found a free labor source, and our girl shamelessly admits it. Honestly, respect. But of course, this fool refuses to cooperate normally and demands payment first. A kiss. Right there. First thing in the morning, too. Bro really woke up and chose chaos. Before Margaret can even react properly, Enoch suddenly appears and shoves Caden's face away with pure hostility radiating off him. The atmosphere instantly turns dangerous because this is literally the worst possible combination. One unstable mage who cannot regulate his emotions, and one overprotective crown prince who loses control at the sight of blood. If these two start fighting, somebody is absolutely dying. So Margaret immediately jumps between them and desperately diffuses the situation herself. She kisses her finger, taps it against Caden's lips, and tells him not to misunderstand because she definitely does not like him. She just wants him to go hunt already. And somehow that actually works. Caden leaves completely satisfied, like an obedient dog getting praised. While Enoch is left standing there looking ready to ask several emotionally loaded questions Margaret absolutely does not want to answer. The second she senses where the conversation is heading, she escapes to the river under the excuse of catching fish. But even alone, her thoughts are a complete mess. Part of her keeps thinking it would be safer if Enoch reunited with Diego's group or met the female lead soon, yet another part strangely hates the idea, and that realization alone throws her off balance. So instead of dwelling on it, she forces herself to focus on survival and starts fishing. Unfortunately, peace never lasts around her. The moment she notices movement nearby, she instantly attacks out of reflex. only to realize the person she just kicked into the ground is Archbishop Bishop Ruzef. Yeah, awkward. The person Margaret kicked into the ground turns out to be Bishop Ruzef, and this man immediately starts questioning her as if she had committed a crime. Our girl quickly apologizes, saying she genuinely mistook him for a wild animal. And, honestly, who sneaks around watching people fish like that anyway? But instead of letting it go, Bishop Ruzef just stares at her in disbelief because, apparently, Lady Floan catching fish with her own hands is more shocking than being kicked across the riverbank. Bro genuinely looks offended by the concept of manual labor. At this point, even I would have kicked him again. Before things can calm down, Enoch suddenly appears beside Margaret, and Bishop Ruzef nearly loses his mind, seeing the Crown Prince standing protectively next to the woman he considers a complete menace. He immediately starts ranting that Margaret must have bewitched him somehow, calling her a witch and accusing her of dragging everyone to the island as part of some insane scheme involving love potions. Meanwhile, Margaret is just standing there like, are we seriously still talking about that? Enoch, however, is absolutely not in the mood. The second Bishop Ruzef keeps running his mouth. He moves like he is ready to beat the bishop into the dirt. Margaret barely manages to stop him, but before anyone can breathe, Caden casually joins the scene and immediately makes everything worse. Now the two most incompatible people on the island have officially met, a mage and a priest. Yeah, this was peaceful and never-ending. Caden starts mocking Bishop Ruzef for being an archbishop, and Bishop Ruzef fires back, calling him a filthy mage, and within seconds, these two are insulting each other like lifelong enemies ready for war. Enoch and Margaret can only watch the disaster unfold while the tension spirals completely out of control. Priests and mages already despise each other in this world, so adding Caden's unstable emotions into the mix is basically pouring oil on a fire. Realizing someone is genuinely about to die, Margaret pulls out the flare gun and points it at both of them. The funniest part is that the gun does not even fire, but Bishop Ruzef has no idea what it is, so he immediately freezes and raises his hands as his life depends on it. Honestly, it works way too well. Margaret finally gets some silence and starts questioning him properly. Bishop Ruzef nervously admits he is not alone and has companions nearby, instantly making her realize the female lead is probably with his group too. But what really confuses her is why an archbishop is wandering around alone, looking for food like some lost traveler in the middle of nowhere. Margaret, Enoch, and Caden sit there quietly watching Bishop Ruzef absolutely devour the grilled fish like a man who has not seen real food in years. And honestly, the way this priest is eating is starting to get a little sad. He keeps praising the fish over and over, while Margaret realizes just how desperate their situation must be. Apparently, Bishop Ruzef's group had been surviving on fruit alone because none of them knew how to catch fish. Which, when she thinks about it, actually makes perfect sense. A party made up of an archbishop, the captain of the Imperial Guard, and high-ranking nobles was never going to include someone casually spearing fish in a river. So, despite how rude Bishop Ruzef was earlier, Margaret still offers him extra fish to take back to his companions. Hunger humbles people fast, and Bishop Ruzef gratefully accepts it while holding the food like treasure. But even while thanking her, this man still cannot let go of the same question every male lead seems obsessed with asking. Are you really the Margaret Floan I know? At this point, our girl is genuinely tired of hearing it. I swear these men share one collective brain cell. Before she can even answer properly, Enoch coldly steps in and reminds Bishop Ruzef that whether she is the same Margaret or not no longer matters, because he will not be seeing her again after today. That immediately shuts him up. Bishop Ruzef finally apologizes sincerely for everything he said earlier, hugs the fish bundle tightly, and leaves. Meanwhile, Margaret secretly wants to ask whether Yuana is safe too, but the timing has already passed, and now bringing it up would sound suspicious. Later that night, she falls asleep, still thinking about the strange clues scattered around the island. The modern items, the flare gun, the weird engravings. None of this feels natural anymore. It feels less like survival and more like some twisted game designed by somebody watching them from the shadows. And the next morning, things get even crazier. While thinking about how desperately she needs proper clothes because her dress is basically falling apart at this point, she suddenly notices something strange nearby. A note. At first, it looks random, but the second she reads the words written on it, her entire body freezes. Bunker map. Yeah. Now this island officially stops feeling like an accident and starts feeling terrifyingly intentional. After finding the mysterious bunker map, Margaret rushes back to the shelter, only to realize both Enoch and Caden are gone. One is out hunting while the other is wandering around doing reconnaissance again, so our girl finally gets a moment alone to properly examine the map. But the second she unfolds it, her confidence starts disappearing. This thing looks ridiculously sloppy. The markings are messy, the directions are vague, and somehow she is supposed to trust this sketch with her life. Still, after piecing things together, she realizes their current location is somewhere near the southern center of the island, while the bunker lies far north beyond the massive river cutting through the land. Which means if she wants answers, she has to cross it eventually. But then she notices something far more disturbing. A handwritten date from the Ingram Kingdom era. A kingdom that collapsed over 1,000 years ago, before the Langredon Empire even existed. That immediately sends chills down her spine because the Western continent has used the Winia calendar for centuries now. So why would a map hidden on this island use a calendar system from a dead dynasty? Who even made this thing? And more importantly, why? Still, despite finally finding what could be her escape route, Margaret hesitates. If the bunker really only fits one person, what happens to Enoch and Caden? She has survived life and death situations with both of them already. Leaving quietly does not feel as easy as it should, especially now that both idiots are emotionally attached to her. Yeah, this situation is getting messier by the day. Anyway, while gathering firewood later, Margaret suddenly hears voices nearby and immediately hides. And this is where things get interesting. A man in the uniform of the Langride Empire Royal Guard appears, and she instantly recognizes him as Diego Bastian, the same thief who stole her clothes before. But standing beside him is someone far more important. Yuana Lucy herself, the female lead of the original story and the Empire's legendary saintess. Our girl is shocked because this is her first time properly seeing her in person, but instead of the elegant, saintly image she expected, Yuana looks exhausted, injured, and honestly miserable. Her hair is cut short, her clothes are torn apart, and she looks like she has been barely surviving. Meanwhile, Diego is already trying to play the dependable knight role, telling Yuana not to trust Crown Prince Enoch Aster Klaus Langrid because he is supposedly cold and overbearing. Bro is shamelessly promoting himself by trash-talking another male lead. And before Margaret can even process it, Diego grabs Yuana's hand and kisses it, like they are already in the middle of a romance route. This man moves fast, I will give him that. Hidden nearby, Margaret waits nervously to see how Yuana reacts. Margaret secretly waits to see how Yuana reacts to Diego's dramatic night act, but instead of blushing or looking touched like in the original story, the saintess just looks exhausted. Honestly, she barely even reacts. Diego keeps talking gently, offering to carry her again, and Yuana simply thanks him in this tired, distant voice before quietly agreeing. That immediately throws Margaret off because this is not how their relationship was supposed to feel. From the outside, Diego almost looks more guilty than romantic, desperately trying to protect Yuana out of obligation rather than affection. And Yuana herself feels strangely detached from everything around her. Before Margaret can think deeper about it, though, another voice suddenly appears behind her and nearly scares her soul out of her body. It is Bishop Rusev. Bro really materializes out of nowhere like a ghost every single time. When she asks what he is doing there, he casually claims he was just passing by and wanted to say hello. Sure, totally normal behavior. But then Margaret notices something strange. The fish she gave him yesterday is still untouched, which can only mean one thing. This man never went back to his group. And when she realizes he cannot even start a fire by himself, everything suddenly makes sense. So now our girl is forced into survival instructor mode again. She teaches him how to make fire using dried bamboo, tinder, and friction, while Bishop Rusev watches like he is witnessing divine revelation itself. The second the fire finally sparks up, this archbishop looks genuinely amazed. I am crying because this man really survived this long without knowing how to cook fish. After eating, Bishop Rusev just keeps sitting there staring at her instead of leaving, and the moment Margaret carefully asks if he should not return to his party, this shameless man immediately asks if he can stay with her instead. That almost makes her choke on the spot. And right on cue, Enoch and Caden return at the absolute worst timing possible. Caden instantly notices the priest sitting comfortably there and looks completely baffled, while Bishop Rusev suddenly volunteers to clean everything up, as if he is already trying to become part of the group. The whole atmosphere immediately feels familiar in the worst way possible, because this is exactly how Caden started squatting in their cave too. Our girl can already feel another massive headache coming. Since it was already getting late, the group reluctantly agrees to let Bishop Rusev stay for one night, and honestly, this whole scene immediately turns into pure chaos. The priest suddenly notices everyone chewing on little sticks and looks completely confused, so Margaret casually explains that they are brushing their teeth. Bro looks genuinely stunned by the concept, which makes her realize something weird. Despite all of them sweating, running around, and basically surviving in the wilderness for over a month, none of them actually smell bad. Maybe it is because of the strange magic affecting the island? Still, she refuses to skip basic hygiene and snaps a twig in half, before handing it over to him like an exhausted survival mom teaching kindergarten children. Meanwhile, Caden is sitting there watching the whole thing with visible jealousy because Margaret is being nice to somebody else again. And right when the sleeping arrangements come up, the atmosphere instantly goes downhill. Bishop Rusev calls Caden lucky. Caden fires back by calling priests glorified guard dogs, and just like that, the two start growling at each other again like middle school rivals trapped in adult bodies. Margaret is already done with both of them at this point. Still, instead of kicking Bishop Rusev away completely, she tells him to stay near the cabin entrance and keep watch since it is dangerous outside. The second she says that, Caden bursts into laughter and immediately starts mocking him harder, talking about how the three of them will sleep warm and cozy inside, while the priest guards the place alone. These men seriously act like jealous house cats fighting over territory. Even Enoch joins in by warning Caden to stop touching Margaret every 5 seconds before dragging everyone inside. Meanwhile, poor Bishop Rusev is left standing there outside looking completely betrayed. But while Margaret watches him, another thought suddenly hits her. Ever since they moved near the river, the nighttime monster attacks have dropped drastically. The wolves barely howl anymore, and the creatures rarely come close after dark. Which makes her wonder if the monsters on this island are actually avoiding the water altogether. And if that is true, this river might be way more important than they realized. The next morning, Bishop Rusev looks absolutely miserable because he did not sleep at all. He spent the entire night outside, terrified of monsters, while everyone else rested comfortably inside the shelter. And honestly, Margaret almost feels bad for him. Almost. Instead, she starts preparing to head out scouting with ropes, gathering tools and emergency rations packed into a leaf bag as she has fully transformed into a survival expert at this point. Bishop Rusev watches her in complete disbelief again, because every single thing she does keeps shattering his image of a noble lady. But before he can complain properly, Margaret casually tells Caden that while she is out scouting, he should send Bishop Rusev away. The mage immediately lights up like he has been handed his favorite hobby and gives her a cheerful thumbs up, promising not to worry because he will take care of him, which basically sounds like a murder threat. Meanwhile, Bishop Rusev instantly panics and begs Margaret to let him stay longer, saying now that he has met her, he genuinely does not know how he is supposed to survive without her anymore. Bro attached himself frighteningly fast. Caden immediately tells him to stop whining and go pray to his god somewhere else while calling him lucky, again just to make him angrier. These two seriously cannot breathe in the same area without fighting. Meanwhile, Margaret is already focused on something much bigger. Now that they have relocated near the river and discovered the bunker map, she plans to scout the northern side and slowly make her way toward the bunker's location. In her mind, finding it should be easier now that she finally has directions. At least, that is what she hopes. But while she moves around preparing everything, Enoch quietly watches her from a distance. And for the first time in a while, he starts getting suspicious. Because the way Margaret has been acting lately feels far too prepared, far too knowledgeable, almost like she already knows this island better than she should. Yeah, he is definitely starting to connect the dots now. Enoch has been trailing behind Margaret for a while now, quiet, almost too quiet, until she finally snaps and turns around, asking if he has something to say. Only then does he admit he is supposed to be on hunting duty today, which immediately throws her off because was that not always Caden's job? Enoch casually reminds her that she was the one complaining that Caden only ever brought back birds. She fires back that she only meant she was tired of eating birds and fish constantly, not that she ever actually complained. But before the argument can settle, she cuts him off again, asking why he is still following her when she is heading to the scouts. Then he drops the real reason, saying he thought it might be good to hunt together and asking if she does not want him around. She brushes it off quickly, but internally she is already calculating, realizing she might have to abandon her plan of finding the bunker today because she cannot risk him knowing about it. That place is her last lifeline after all. Then she notices his expression and asks why he is looking at her like that, and he suddenly accuses her of preparing to leave, asking if she plans to abandon him too. That hits a nerve instantly. Since when did she become someone he belongs to? She snaps back, insisting it is not like that at all, but Enoch does not back off. He steps closer, pleads with her to let him stay by her side, then reaches for her hair while looking straight into her eyes and asks if that is allowed, like he is deliberately testing her limits. She is just standing there thinking, is he seriously trying to seduce her right now? Before she can fully process it, he pulls her even closer, and she finds herself drifting into the wild thought of possibly giving him the last room in the bunker. She warns him not to regret those words later. He immediately promises he will not, and she laughs softly, thinking he really should not be making promises so easily. They both finally turn to move on, and that is when she hears it. A faint crunching sound behind them. Yeah, of course. The peaceful moment was not going to last. Margaret quickly calls Enoch over and points towards something half buried in the ground. A supply crate. At first, it feels like a relief until they open it and find it empty, like someone already picked through it. Enoch immediately suspects Bishop Rusev and his group since they are basically the only other humans on the island. But Margaret is already distracted, noticing strange writing on the crate and flipping it over. The label stops her cold. Handle with caution. M67 fragmentation grenade. A grenade. And it gets even weirder. The original Korean text has been scratched out and replaced with something like a flame bomb in Imperial language, like someone deliberately rebranded it for this world. That is when her thoughts start racing, connecting it to the hidden supply warehouse from the novel, the one guarded by monsters and packed with modern weapons and survival gear. But something else clicks too. The monsters have barely been showing up lately. She mentions it out loud, and Enoch adds that even near the beach where they first woke up, the wolf types have been absent. It is starting to look like they avoid water. Still, that is far from comforting because there are worse creatures on this island. Tarantula types, snake types, and even anacondas that can spit poison. Just thinking about it makes everything feel heavier. Margaret tries to warn Enoch that something feels genuinely off, but before she can even finish the sentence, a massive explosion echoes through the area. Both of them freeze for half a second, then immediately run toward the sound, and what they find makes everything worse. A giant snake creature, nothing like anything she remembers from the novel, just sitting there like a completely new nightmare. Margaret stares for a second, completely thrown. Yeah, this island keeps rewriting itself, and none of the changes are ever good. Enjoying this so far? Comment Margaret below for the next part. Until next time, ciao!